Nearly 156,000 military personnel have been concentrated by the Russians on one of the key fronts, Pokrovsk. According to the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, Alexander Syrskyi, intense fighting continues there. Also, despite complicated logistics, Myrnohrad is not encircled by the occupiers. In total, since the beginning of the day, 108 combat engagements have been recorded in the combat zone. More details about the situation on the front line are coming up next. Russian troops continue their assaults near Vovchansk in the Kharkiv region and in the Lyman direction in Donetsk. This was reported by Viktor Trehubov, head of the communications department of the Joint Forces Group. The occupiers in Vovchansk are trying to push out the Ukrainian defenders, but they are not succeeding. The enemy continues to exert pressure near Vovchansk and in the Lyman direction. There are also ongoing attempts to break through toward Kupiansk, but without much success. In Kupiansk itself, Russian forces remain present in the northern districts of the city, where they are taking losses and trying to reinforce their troops. In other areas, activity has not been very high in recent days. Viktor Trehubov, head of the communications department of the Joint Forces Group, speaking live on the Marathon and DNN. Operators of the Artan special unit of the main intelligence directorate of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense shared the results of their combat operations in the Lyman direction. The pilots discovered a shelter and Russian soldiers who unsuccessfully tried to hide there. There were also clashes in this direction near the settlements of Novoyegorovka, Grekovka, Derilova and Kolodyazy, and Zareknoe. Near Konstantinovka, Russian forces conducted assault operations near Shcherbinovka, Pleshcheyevka, Yablonovka, Rusiny Yar and towards Sofievka. And in the Pokrovsk direction, Ukrainian defenders repelled the invaders' attacks. Near Rodinske, Myrnohrad, Kotlin, Udakne, Molodetske and towards Novopavlivka.
Our advanced drones are also continuously monitoring the enemy's vulnerable rear, their crucial logistics lines, and all their strategic approaches. In other words, there are truly two distinct battles happening simultaneously, what can accurately be called a fierce ground battle, where our brave defenders effectively eliminate Russian occupiers who have infiltrated or penetrated the city and its outskirts, while at the same time a battle is taking place in the air. This is primarily a battle of small aviation.
Taking advantage of worsening weather conditions which complicate the use of drones, the Russians attempted another large-scale mechanized assault near Pokrovsk. However, Ukrainian defenders stopped the attack. In particular, operators from the 3rd Sivoboda Battalion destroyed a light armored tractor covered with so-called grills, along with an MLRS launcher and a D-30 howitzer. Meanwhile, Ukrainian soldiers from the 7th Air Assault Corps raised the blue and yellow flag in the center of Pokrovsk. The military emphasized that by doing so they refuted the fake statement by Russian propaganda about the alleged capture of the city.
For 16 months, they have been stuck like in a trap. Even though they are there, and it's true that they're hiding something, that they control a certain part of Pokrovsk, they're trying to hold on or to encircle Myrnohrad, but none of this is working out for them, because everyone is doing their job excellently in their own place. I'll put it this way. The task, the armed forces of Ukraine and the defense forces as a whole have already overfulfilled the task, specifically in the Pokrovsk direction.
A group of Russian occupiers in civilian clothes tried to infiltrate the rear of the defense forces in the Huliaipol direction. This was reported by the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine. According to the service, the enemy observed the positions of the Ukrainian defenders for some time and then, taking advantage of difficult weather conditions, attempted a deceptive maneuver. However, during their movement, the border guards neutralized the saboteurs. Underneath their civilian clothes, the attackers were found to be wearing Russian army uniforms. And over the past day, Ukraine's defense forces eliminated 1,460 Russian occupiers. Thus, the total losses of the Russian army since the start of the full-scale war have exceeded 1,185,000 military personnel. In addition, the day before, Ukrainian defenders destroyed 7 armored combat vehicles, 23 artillery pieces, a multiple rocket launcher system, and 160 units of automotive equipment of the enemy. Ukrainian drones from the Unmanned Systems Forces struck chemical plants in Russia where explosives for the Russian Federation's army are produced. This was reported by the commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces, Robert Magyar, Brody.
According to him, as a result of the attack, 2 plants were damaged. These are Okron in Veliki Novgorod, which produces nitric acid, ammonia, and ammonium nitrate, as well as Dorogobush in the Smolensk region. There, they produce substances used in the manufacture of TNT, Octogen, RDX, and other explosives. Drones halted the operation of a Russian oil production platform in the Caspian Sea. This was reported by Freedom sources in the Security Service of Ukraine. A facility belonging to the company Lukoil Nizhne Volzhsk Neft was attacked. This is the first strike on Russia's oil infrastructure in the Caspian Sea. At least 4 hits on the facility have been recorded. Oil and gas production have been halted. I should note that this field is considered one of the largest in the Russian sector of the Caspian Sea. Its reserves are estimated at 129 million tons of oil and 30 billion cubic meters of gas.
The Security Service of Ukraine continues successful special operations against the Russian oil and gas sector, constantly expanding their geographic scope. An explosion in the Caspian Sea. This is yet another reminder to the Russian Federation that all its enterprises working for the war are legitimate targets wherever they may be located. Source: Freedom in the Security Service of Ukraine.
NATO chief Mark Rutte believes that the alliance is the Kremlin's next military target. He also emphasized that the Russian regime has become brazen, reckless, and ruthless. And right now, China is Russia's lifeline, allowing it to continue its war against Ukraine. Rutte noted that NATO allies are already in danger, and although Western countries have started to increase their defense budgets, it is not enough.
We are Russia's next target, and we are already in danger. When I became NATO Secretary General last year, I warned that what is happening in Ukraine could also happen to allied countries and that we need to shift to a wartime mindset.
Nevertheless, Mark Rutte is confident that Europe is capable of standing up to the Russian threat, not least thanks to Ukraine. He considers Germany to be one of the countries actively supporting Kiev. At a joint press conference with Chancellor Friedrich Merz, he called Germany the driving force behind support for Ukraine among NATO countries. In turn, the head of the German government confirmed his commitment to this policy going forward and promised to continue putting pressure on the Russian Federation.
We firmly stand with Ukraine in order to achieve our common goals. To advance this work, we will continue to increase pressure on Moscow. And finally, we will also take tougher measures against the Shadow Fleet. At the same time, we will continue to provide large-scale support to Ukraine. Above all, we want to use frozen Russian assets in Europe so that Ukraine can effectively defend itself against future Russian attacks.
The European Union has come several steps closer to providing Ukraine with 90 billion euros from Russian assets, and it is making progress in preparing a reparations loan. Today, EU ambassadors approved the procedure for the indefinite freezing of Russian funds. This is one of the necessary conditions to secure the loan. Diplomats refer to Article 122 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, which provides the legal basis for the EU's emergency measures.
When does Article 122 come into effect? If we look at the past 5 years, we have often had to deal with unexpected economic crises, unexpected situations that had economic consequences. And it is precisely in such cases that we usually resorted to this article. And I think if we look at the current situation, we can confidently say that Russia's unjustified aggression against Ukraine is affecting not only Ukraine, of course, but also the broader economic situation in Europe. I think that today and in the coming days, a lot of attention will be focused on Ukraine. It's impossible to attend a meeting in Europe without paying attention to Ukraine at this truly critical moment. And it is very important that we, as the European Union, develop a mechanism to support Ukraine. This mechanism should essentially serve 2 purposes. First, it must provide Ukraine with fundamental support, here and now, because the need for funding is urgent. Second, it must ensure that Russia will pay. And I welcome the fact that today or tomorrow this week we will take measures to block Russian assets for a longer period. I think this is appropriate.
Despite the fact that the current proposal by the European Commission to use Russian assets raises concerns in Belgium, its budget minister Vincent van Petegem believes that the Russian Federation must pay for its aggression against Ukraine. And for this purpose, at some point, it may be precisely Russia's frozen assets that are used. This issue is very important. And to be clear, the goal and purpose here are also absolutely clear. Ukraine needs unwavering support. And Russia really must pay for the war, for the unjust war, and for its aggression. And the frozen assets must be used for this. The question, of course, is that today, as responsible politicians, we do have certain concerns. Thus, it is clear that we are considering the vulnerabilities as well as the legal and financial risks associated with the proposed option. But I know for sure that we are looking for constructive solutions, and I am confident that if we work together on this constructive solution, we will become stronger, as a union, as the European Union.